Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life, the podcast. You're listening to Author's Corner, where we highlight and showcase our local authors. Today, I'm speaking to Kevin D. Clergy, author of Beyond Blind Blaming. And Kevin and I are going to be talking on the topic Understanding Blind Blaming, the hidden obstacles blocking your breakthrough. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Thanks, Myrna. Thanks for having me.
You are very welcome. All right, so let me give you guys a brief introduction. Kevin is a breakthrough specialist, author, and sought after speaker, keynote speaker known for helping people uncover the hidden obstacles that keep them stuck. His RCD method helps people reflect deeply, connect strategically, and decide boldly, creating breakthroughs that last. Sorry, with signature stories from hero to zero, which we are going to talk about. So, yes, Kevin, I'm glad that you are in this particular space because, yes, a lot of people, blame things and circumstances for what's happening in their life. And I remember when I was going through the fears and I was going through all the negative emotions and all the things, and I saw that blaming was on there, Yeah, if you're blaming people, you can never really succeed. You have to take ownership. So I'm going to enjoy our conversation today. So as we get started, you teach that blind blaming destroys our potential and keeps people trapped in cycles of frustration. Can you break down what blind blaming really is and how it subtly shows up in our daily lives without us even realizing it?
I can. And I'll start with the story that everybody seems to love. When I was this does the best way of explaining what blind blaming is, and then I'll get into the specifics. But when I was 10 years old, I was a phenomenal baseball player. I had a batting average of 550, and if, for those of you who don't know much about baseball, that's actually really good. Babe Ruth in his heyday had a
I didn't think that was
394.
possible.
It was possible. I get, you get on the internet and sometimes the internet is angry. I keep getting messages like, yeah, but you were 10 years old. I was like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
but
know, right?
I hit a ball every other time I went to bat, like
Yes.
clockwork, right over the second baseman's head. I was good. I was great. And my dad, of course, noticed that, and other people started to notice. So he started pushing me to work on my mindset. We had a swing coach in the off season the next year because we were preparing me to play high school ball and then off to college. I had dreams of playing for the Texas Longhorns and the Texas Rangers and batting against Nolan Ryan, even though when I got to that age, he was a little older, but he was still playing. But then the next year, I stepped up to bat and something was different. I started swinging and missing. In fact, I missed every single time I went to bat, and my batting average plummeted to zero. And for those of you who don't know, that's really bad. So I literally went from hero to zero in one season. And everybody listening can probably guess what I heard from the stands. Come on, kid, keep your head in the game. Play to win this time. And my dad blamed my attitude, who, by the way, still blames my attitude to this day. He doesn't remember what happened. He was just visiting and he's like, yeah, when Kevin was 10 years old, he was the best ball player I've ever seen. And then his attitude went to you know what. And I'm like, Dad, I just told you what happened. I wrote a whole book on it. He's like, oh, right, that. So people don't remember. But anyway, so even my dad would give me lectures on the way home. And then I played one more year and sat on the bench most of the year watching others play the game I so desperately loved. So I quit. And 2 weeks after I quit at a fluke eye exam, we figured out the real problem. The eye doctor basically said, sorry, the kid's blind without glasses. So it wasn't my attitude, my motivation, my swing. I wasn't failing at solving my problems. I was trying to solve the
Wow.
wrong problem perfectly. And that is
Now
blind
I
blaming.
get the blind blaming. That's great. That's a
Yeah,
great
so that's
plan.
where it comes from. And the real problem was this: the adults in my life never stopped blaming me for something that was completely out of my control. And I even started blaming myself and doubting myself. And this is the problem that I have with most self-help books. There's a lot of self-help books that are pointing the finger back at us. And many times there are things going on that we didn't think of or that we can't see that are holding us back. So blind blaming is blind because we can't see what the real problem is. And it's blaming because we instinctively have to blame something, even if it's ourselves. And it keeps people stuck for years.
Wow. Yes. So it's really interesting that you actually have a great story about not being able to see. and that forms your work. I love it. I love how God moves. That's amazing. But yeah, but yeah, I mean, I've heard if we're going to talk about baseball statistics, they're talking about a 3-point batting average or something like that, and that means that you miss 70% of the time. But when you have a three point, what is it, 3-point average or whatever, that
Yeah,
means that you're
300 is
you're the
actually
best.
considered really good in
Yeah,
baseball,
you're
especially
really good with a
professional
3-point
baseball.
average. Yes, so you're doing five. I like I said, I didn't even think that that's possible. But wow. So that's actually a good story in so many ways. People might undervalue it because yeah, you were 10. I mean, I thought when I heard it that you were like playing for, um, uh, like a national, I mean, a professional ball player.
No, I was a kid. It was, and it's interesting because I didn't discover blind blaming for 40 years.
Mm.
So when I sold my company, I had a nice life-changing exit. I had built a nice marketing agency up, and I sold my company and came home and had my dream car and all that stuff that I got. Stupid purchase one. And somebody asked me at that evening, "What's next, Kevin?" I'm like, "I don't know. I thought I was kind of done." And it really bothered me because they're like, we're only 50. I know you're not done. I mean, you're not going to just sit around and day drink all day. And I'm like, well, no, I don't want to do that. So I walked into my office after everybody left and wrote on my little virtual whiteboard, what is next? And I saw this book on the shelf that said how to write a TED Talk. And I was like, well, that sounds interesting. So I
Mm.
joined a mastermind group about how to do a TED Talk and had all these things I've taught for the last 25 years. I didn't really know what was my one idea that could change everything, which is the TED New slogan. And so in this mastermind group, they helped me figure it out. And they went through this really cool exercise for 2 weeks. I went through my whole life and all the life lessons, and we settled on that story of when I was 10. And they're like, we really
Mhm.
like this story. It's got to apply to something you're doing now. It's like, you know what? It does. Because I've been coaching business owners for years and coaches and authors and a bunch of other people. And this is something they battle every single day because they'll think it's one thing. And then I pull them aside and say, no, it's not. It's something else. Why don't we
Yeah.
call it blind blaming? And that's
Yes.
where it came from.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. It's perfect. It's perfection.
Well, thank you.
It's perfection. The title a lot of times is very important, but you didn't just pick your title out of a hat. You picked your title out of, something that happened to you that's amazing. So I'm glad that you're able to put it into context to help other people and not just your story. So, let's understand, blind blaming as the foundation for your breakthrough method. How are you teaching people to use this particular concept to help them in business?
That's great because and actually we were going to name the book Blind Blaming first, and then my old business partner said, you might want to put a little bit more positive spin on it. So how about like teaching people to move beyond blind blaming? I was like, well, that's freaking perfect. I love it. So that's where it started. And then about 3 years ago, we started testing this framework that I came up with. We call it the RCD method, and it stands for reflect, connect, and decide. It's simple, but remember, simple doesn't always mean easy. So, reflect is basically where you're saying, is there something else going on that I possibly can't see? Which is hard because when we're in the middle of a problem, an obstacle, there's a lot of data out there that shows it's almost physiologically impossible for you to see it. In fact, there's a great book called The Structure of Scientific Revolution. And I just learned recently it's the most quoted book in history. Who
Hmm.
knew? But he studied researchers. And what he found was when researchers were doing studies and the results of those studies fit into their paradigm, their way of thinking, what they thought would happen, everything was fine. But when they did a study and then something else, or the results of that study fell outside of their paradigm, what they thought would happen, it was almost like the data didn't exist. And he proved
Mm.
it, and they would run the same thing over and over again and get different results, which we all know what that defines,
Mhm.
insanity. So it's interesting because when we're stuck in our own problems, sometimes we can't see it, which leads us to see, which is connect. I believe that you have to connect with somebody outside of your sphere of influence because sometimes your family, your friends, your coworkers, we're all stuck in the same blame loop that we go into in the book. We don't have time today, but it keeps you stuck. So I really like working with a professional coach or joining mastermind groups, as I mentioned before. And I like paid groups because people who pay attention to you. And so I learned this years ago because when I was working with my first coach, and he's like, I don't know, let me ask my coach. And I said, well, wait a minute, you have a
You have a
coach? He's like,
coach.
Kevin, how many Olympic athletes do you know that won a gold medal that didn't have a coach and weren't part of a team?
Right.
Coach mastermind. I'm like, oh, great point. So that's C, connect with somebody outside of your sphere of influence, whether it's a mentor, a paid coach, a paid mastermind, so they can look at things from a different perspective without all the emotional baggage and experiences that we have. Sometimes it's success that keeps us from seeing different things. Sometimes it's our failures. So then, after you've done the research yourself, then you've got an outside opinion. Then it's time to decide to do something different. And I'm not going to cuss on your show, but it's in the book we call it MFD. And one of my clients was debating on whether to get a loan to grow her business. It was going to double her business, and it was big. She was working with two different loan companies, and she's like, "Well, what do you think I should do, Kevin?" I was like, "Well, it's been 2 months." Her name is Kayla, and she's given me permission to use her name. And I said, "I just think you need to make an effing decision." But I didn't use I used the word. And she's like, "Oh, okay, right." So we end the call. A month later, she's back on the phone with me. And I said, "What's going well?" Which is what I like to start my calls with these days because we all know the world's a dumpster fire for some people. And she said, "Oh, Kevin, I'm MFDing all over the place. I mean, you've completely changed my life. Even my husband noticed I'm making decisions. I mean, yeah, we've made some mistakes, but I've been able to pivot and we're doing so well." And I'm like, "What are you talking about, Kayla? MFD?" She's like, "Yeah, making effing decisions. I'm doing it. And I'm doing it like every day. You've changed my life." And so now that part of the book that I was most nervous about, even churches are liking it. Even Jack Canfield on a call said, "I even love your effing part." I'm like, oh my God, I got the chicken soup for the soul guy to say the F word. So it's turned into this thing. So now people have it on their tennis shoes, on their t-shirts, they have MFD on their mugs. And when I ask people, what
Cool.
was your biggest takeaway from the book or the keynote speech? They're like, MFD. I just need to make a decision. I'm like, so cool. And I'm not even, I was even going to do like a rated G edition. I'm not doing it
Right.
anymore. People
No,
love it too
that's right.
much. And it fits.
Well, sometimes you need to shock the system, and that's basically what happens. Even though a lot of people curse, it still shocks you when somebody does it, right? And so
I think if you use
sometimes
it
you
strategically
need
and
to
not just throw
shock.
it out. Yeah, I
That's right.
agree with
You
you
need to
100%. And
shock
I
the
actually,
system.
I
Mhm.
talk about that in the book, and I was so nervous about it. I told a story of my actual business partner now, Eric, who he told me a story of like, I used to get really offended when people would use bad language to the point where I wouldn't even listen to their message. And
Mhm.
for some reason, one day it hit me that I'm not going to let someone else's choice of words keep me from something that could possibly change my life.
Mhm.
And so that kind of softens the blow a little bit. Now, don't
Yeah.
misunderstand. I'm not telling people to go drop F-bombs all over
No,
the
no,
place
no,
all
no,
day
no,
long,
no.
but I think you're right. If you use it strategically every now and then,
Yeah.
it gives people to pause and pay
Yes.
attention and do more.
Yeah. It shocks them, shocks their system. But, as a coach, one of the first things that I learned is about blind spots because you can never see what your problem is. And it's not that you go around, I like the fact that you put the blind with the blaming, but it's not necessarily at a lot of time you're blaming because you can't see. But, on the opposite, on the flip side, I mean, I remember when I was in coaching school, they were using an example of a CEO that was having problems with his staff. And he thought it was one thing, right? And then when he comes into the coaching conversation, it is him, right? But I
Yeah.
guess that could be blaming because he's blaming his subordinates, and it's actually something that he's doing because he couldn't see it. So, yeah, I mean, it's blind spots. You can never see it.
Yeah.
One of my quotes that I use often is if you are the picture, you can't see the frame, or if you're the frame, you can't see the picture. Something along those lines. You
I
read
love
it?
it though.
Right.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, here's what I hear the most right now is that, I mean, we were doing this group setting, a group coaching session, and it was actually in person. We have some in-person events. And this one group came up to us and like, we've already had a meeting. We need you to coach us through why people don't want to work anymore. And I'm like, oh, really? Well, is it possible they just don't want to work for you? And so then I started asking questions. Well, talk to me about your hiring strategy. And they said, what do you mean? I was like, okay, strike one, going back to the baseball. What about your onboarding processes? And they said it again. What do you mean? I'm like, well, okay, strike
It's like, dude.
two. And have you outlined what type of person and personality is really going to highly perform in this position? And they're like, okay, obviously we need to work with you. And I was like, well, that's not my point, guys. Let's work on the solution. So, yes, you need to figure out what a high performance person would do in that position, what kind of personality type that goes along with it, and start hiring with that hiring strategy. Then create a great experience like you do for your clients, for your new employees to show them that you care, that you give a you know what, and that you want them to succeed and start developing them. And then you'll be shocked that there actually is people that want to work
I don't
out
want to
there.
work. Yes.
So anyway,
Yes.
great example that you gave. That's another great one that just happened recently. So
Right. Yeah. 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 Company culture, which is basically what, a lot of the big companies now have a company culture because yeah, if your human employees are your greatest asset. So you just have to think of them that way. All right. So, our topic today is understanding blind blaming, the hidden obstacles blocking your breakthrough. For someone listening right now who feels stuck, maybe in their career, relationships, or mindset, what is the first step they can take to stop blind blaming and start seeing the truth that leads to a breakthrough?
great question. So the book's divided into three sections. And the first is awareness. So what we found is just by being aware that blind blaming is out there and that it exists, because we blame instinctively, we don't think about it. There's a lot of cognitive biases that we're struggling with, and they can be good because they're mental shortcuts to help us make decisions faster sometimes, but they can also be pretty bad. So there's these fatal flaws of blind blaming, these cognitive biases that keep us from seeing it. So fatal flaw number one is that when you think you know what the problem is to a challenge that you've got or a solution to the problem you've got, you know that's the problem in your gut. And it's called availability bias. It means the first thing that pops into our head is clearly the problem, no matter what else is going on. And then the fatal flaw number two is when we become a treasure hunter for data that backs up that initial belief. And
Mhm.
it's called confirmation bias. We go out and seek information out that verifies that what we have is true. Even when there's a lot of information or data out there that shows that you're wrong, your brain basically ignores it. And then when you're busy doing that, that's fatal flaw number three. You can't solve the problem because you're fixing the wrong one. And so that's kind of how it plays together. So that's awareness. So once you're aware of these cognitive biases, which we go into much greater detail in the book, but then you can work on the solution. That's when we get into the RCD method. And I think if anybody wants to walk away with something right now, if you're really struggling with something in your life, I don't care if it's work, personal relationships, kids, just ask yourself, is there something else going on here that I can't see? And then
Mhm.
connect with somebody outside of your sphere of influence. What do you think's going on?
Mhm.
I recommend somebody who doesn't know you, that you can actually pay for professional help, whatever that is. And sometimes, just like for me, it was a paid doctor.
Mhm.
Because when we go through this reflect stage in the book, we go through five different areas of people's lives. We go through their health. And we just had one recently that read the book and said, listen, I have to tell you something. You changed my life. And I'm like, really? I'd love to hear the stories. Tell me what happened. She goes, well, I worked on my health strand because we have this thing called the obstacle DNA. And so this deep nexus analysis in this health strand, a lot of people, when they get older, the doctors aren't checking for hormones. And it
Mhm.
turns out she had low testosterone. And I'll say that again. She
I
had
know. I know.
testosterone.
I know we have
Oh yeah,
them.
we got it. And she's like, "Look, I didn't do it. I went to a specialist. She found out that it was so low. She was wondering how I was even able to function. My team is like freaking out because I'm like in a good mood. I'm a completely different person. My relationship with my husband's better. And this is the whole point of this beyond blind blaming. If you can find that one thing and fix it that's underneath everything else, it creates a ripple effect across your life and or your business. And we've seen it happen again and again. That's just one health person. But connect with somebody who is a specialist. Just like there's an individual that I know quite well, who his team swore that he had ADHD. He was getting to the point where he was having a very successful business. He got into about 1 million a year, and he was struggling. He was forgetting to do things. Employees were getting so upset they were leaving the company. His business partner got so frustrated he hired a ADHD coach for him,
Mhm.
and then about 6 months later, the ADHD coach said, I don't think you have ADHD. I think there's something else going on. So she sent him back to his primary care doctor who said, well, you've battled this your whole life. And he says, no, And I wish people would stop saying it. I was a straight A student. This has all happened recently. I'm just too busy. I need a better planner. I need to use block scheduling. That's it. And she said, I don't think so. Put him through some tests, and it turns out he had sleep apnea. It wasn't that he
Mm.
had ADHD. He didn't have a problem with
Wow.
his planning system. He was chronically exhausted. And that
Wow.
person was me.
Oh, really?
And once we got that fixed, this would have been
Wow.
2018. That's when my company started to take off. Customers
That's so
started coming back
beautiful.
in
That's a
droves. So
beautiful
yeah, it was
story.
another blind blaming effect for me. And that just happened to be health. But we also look at purpose because I find that people lose sight of what they're really supposed to be doing and they just get used to doing something they hate. Another COO read the book and said, listen, I got to let you know, I quit my job. I was like, wait a minute, that's not the whole point of the book. He's like, no, you don't understand. In that purpose strand, I figured out that I was just miserable, but I have to tell you the story. Once I made the change, my wife came to me and said, hey, what's going on with you? And he's like, what's going on? Is everything okay? She goes, well, yeah, you're like a completely different person. You're present. You're
Huh?
communicating with our kids better. And he's like, yeah, I just started this company I've been dreaming of for a while on MFD and made a decision and I'm doing it. But he lost track of his purpose. And then we go through several other things in the book that we look at. So once you get there, share it with an outside source, a trusted mentor, somebody who's outside of your sphere of influence. And then finally, MFD. Make a decision. If you want something different, you have to do
Do
something
something
different.
different.
And you're going to screw up. You're going to mess up again. It may not be the right problem. It's this process that we teach.
Yeah.
And sometimes once you get to a new level, it creates a new devil. And it's a
Yes.
good
Yes.
problem,
Yes.
but
I
it
like
happens.
that one. Yes. New level, new devil. Usually only talks about it in the sphere of spirituality, but yeah, it's everywhere.
It is. It's everywhere. Yeah. We run into people because in some of our higher end programs, we have some high end mastermind groups that people join where they get in a room with other very successful entrepreneurs and we share ideas. And it's
Mhm.
very interesting to see some people that started at like 300 to $500,000 a year who are doing 5 million a year now, and to
Mm.
hear their challenges and how they've changed. But it's interesting because in the group, even if somebody's a little smaller, they'll help those people. It's like, look, I know where you're at. Okay. For you, it's your mindset. You don't think you can be where I'm at. And you think if you do, that it's going to triple or quadruple amount of work that you're doing. And it's just not true. Even though I'm
Mm.
doing 5 million a year, I am doing much less and I have much
That's
more of a
that's
life and I can have more of an impact. So that
wow.
goes back to the mindset thing.
The
So
mindset.
anyway, those are some
Oh,
other examples.
no, that's beautiful. Yes, that's a big topic. I mean, I thought it was just be like blaming other people for your problems in life.
Yeah, well, we do that too, don't we? Yeah, it's not my fault. I see that a lot in some children that I'm close to, adult children, I will call them. They're just getting out of their
Yeah, right.
careers and,
But this is
learning this,
much deeper. I like it. I
yep, how
love
the
it.
world works. So yeah, it's gotten pretty deep. And after 3 years of testing it, I probably launched the book a little too late. I probably should have done it sooner, but I just wanted to make darn sure that it worked. And I had some really good stories. And now we have so many more stories than in the book. So it's very exciting for me and humbling at the same time. You write something, you pour your heart and soul into it. You hope people like it, but you don't really know. So
No, that's why you got to MFD, make the
got a
decision.
MFD. I made it. I said, fine, we're launching this thing and let's go. And Jack Canfield was only the second person I had read the book. And a lot of people don't know that he's actually an author coach. And I went through his program and there was like 6 people before me and he was beating them up. I don't like your story. There's mistakes in your book. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. And he gets to mine and he's like, oh, Kevin St. Clergy, right. Yes, I stayed up till midnight reading your book. I loved it. It's going to be a classic. Let's just talk about how to market it. I'm like, oh, whew.
Wow, that's
Wonderful. So that was a
beautiful.
huge testimonial for me. And that's,
But
yeah, it was fun.
even if even if he had criticized it, you could just go fix it.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. That's why I hired him. I was like, hey,
That's
look,
right.
I'm not looking, I really want some help. And he did help because he taught me some things like for those of you who are authors and listening, my biggest takeaway from that session was he made a lot of money doing bulk book purchases. So
Mhm.
now we had 2 this week. They're smaller ones, but one company bought 10 for their office, the other one bought 8. And I never would have offered that in the past without Jack's
Without
suggestion.
Jack telling you
Yeah.
about it.
And he also
Great.
suggested we put together a certification program. So now we're going to be certifying other coaches, consultants, and corporate trainers on how to go out and become a blind blaming specialist. And so
That's
now I can get to
amazing.
that number. We want to help 100 million people get to the root cause of a problem that they can't seem to fix. And I can't do that alone. I need an army of coaches who are trained in the RCD method and the blind blaming framework to do so. So we're
Wow.
launching that after the first of the year. I'm super excited about it. So
Wow, I'm sitting here thinking about purpose and thinking about how God works and thinking about your your stint as a baseball player when you were 10 has now obviously you're over 50 because you're telling me a minute ago that when you turned
yeah,
50, but that
53 on November 6th. So I just turned 53. And it's funny because I thought I was 53 the whole year. I was 52.
Right, you're over 50 and that story is become the springboard for your business and your purpose. So that is I love hearing beautiful stories like this. So that's amazing. So I think you've already told us why you wrote the book, but one of the questions I always ask my authors is, what is the main message that you want listeners to walk away with from your book? And the book title is called Understanding Blind Blaming, the Hidden Obstacles Blocking Your Breakthrough. Again.
Yeah. So what I want people to walk away with is that when you feel stuck, it's not that I think the key phrase that people seem to like from the book is not that people are failing at solving their problems. They're succeeding at solving the wrong problem perfectly. So I wrote the book so people could help them identify what the right problem is. So if they fix that one thing, just like that woman with her hormones, or the man with his purpose, or the employer that had the wrong hiring and onboarding process, the results after were amazing. Like the person that fixed their onboarding and hiring processes, their attrition rate with employees went down 90%. Their business grew 25% within 6 months.
Hmm.
That person that I said that fixed her hormones, the woman who got the testosterone treatment, has doubled her practice size.
Hmm.
Doubled. And she was big already. And she's in a better mood and her relationships are better, not only at home, but at work too.
And her sex life
So
is better too. So
that's right. All of it. I had a couple that came to me. It's interesting because the testosterone and the hormone replacement thing, I never knew. I had to go through it too. The fun part of getting older. But it changed my life because it gives me more energy to work. And I lost 40
yes,
pounds this year. So it's made a
yes,
significant difference for
yes, it
me.
does. Your hormones are
But
important.
I was blaming my motivation and I was blaming, I mean, I've gone through this. This book was, I think it was actually written for me and the things that I've been through. It's very therapeutic when you write a book for yourself and you don't realize it until you're done. You're like, wow, this is kind of for me.
Yeah, I know. I know some people go read, and I think I was interviewing a woman once that wrote about grief. She was a coach, and in coaching school, she decided to write about grief, but she's never had any grief personally. And then her husband died, and then she had to go read her own book
That's right. Yeah.
to get.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, the plumber has the leakiest faucet. It's funny when you let your girlfriend read the book and then you do something that you say not to do in the book. She goes, you should go read your book again. I
To
just
go
did a
read your
LinkedIn
book,
post
right?
about this because I was like, oh my God, that's going on LinkedIn. That is hilarious. And you're totally right. Because one of the things we teach is look, if you truly take 100% responsibility for everything in your life, there's two things you have to give up: blaming and complaining.
Blaming and
And it's
complaining.
hard. We developed this app. We're about to launch it. It's a 7-day challenge to go 7 days without blaming or complaining about anyone
Complaining.
or anybody or anything. And every time you do catch yourself, you log in the app and your 7 days starts
You
over.
start over again. Well, that would not be me because I don't blame or complain.
Yeah, perfect. Well, a lot of successful people don't. That's my point. Because a lot of times we get so stuck. And that's, I
Yes.
think, if you're blind blaming too, it's a huge anxiety trigger
Yeah.
because you're starting to feel like things are out of your control. And
Mhm.
but here's the thing though, sometimes it's not you. Just like my vision wasn't me, that was just something that was going wrong with my body.
Right, right, right. Yes. Beautiful story. Beautiful story. Amazing. Well, Kevin, I enjoyed my conversation with you. Again, I like to when my guests, blow my mind about something. So we came in and the conversation went a different way. But as soon as you told the story about, being your hero to zero, then I got how everything connected. And as a coach myself, I knew about blind spots and I knew about the fact that you can be blaming one thing for a problem and not realizing what the actual problem is. So it's a great correlation and it's and yeah, I mean yeah, the secondary title of your book is Hidden Obstacles Blocking Your Breakthrough, right? Because you're right. If you don't know what the problem is, then you can't really solve it, right? So,
Happens all the time. And we did put something in there for coaches and mastermind group leaders. In the book, it talks about how to get, if you do work with a professional coach, in the book, we talk about how to get the most out of it. Because last story, but I had somebody I was working with and they were complaining about their coach. They were just attending a day event. And I said, well, let me ask you this. What are you unhappy about? Well, it seems like it's social hours. Like, okay, well, do you come to the call prepared? What do you mean? I was like, okay, wrong answer again. Do you come with your top three problems that you're going through that they can fix? It's your responsibility to prep for the call. And she's like, well,
mhm.
I'm not getting anything out of my mastermind either. I was like, well, let me guess, you're not showing up. Well, I haven't been able to make the last two sessions. Like, well, then how can you possibly get any value from something when you don't even show up? MFD
Sure.
and get over there
Right,
on the next
right.
session. So I did write a little bit in the book about if you do hire or join a professional group or professional coach, how to
Mhm.
get the most and also how to find good coaches and interview them. So I think there's something in there for
For
everybody.
everybody. Right. Amazing. Yes. Sounds like good work. All right. So, all right. Well, listen, I again enjoyed my conversation with Kevin today. We were talking on the topic of blind blaming. So, definitely go pick up a copy of his book. Tell our listeners where they can get your book. Everybody knows it's on Amazon, but you might have a website. Let us know your social media handles if they want to connect with you.
Yeah, blindblaming.com. So it's super easy. If you just go to blindblaming.com, we do offer the audiobook for free on the homepage, as long as you subscribe to my weekly newsletter where we share one story a week of super successful beyond blind blaming people and their story of how they broke through or broke free. And then also my book is all over Amazon and everywhere else. But blindblaming.com, you can get the audiobook for free. You can also buy the book directly from my website as well. There's some other things on the website. We have an e-course that goes along with it and a book bundle that people can get as well. And then connect with me on social media. You can look for Kevin D. St. Clergy on Instagram and LinkedIn, as well as where else am I? I'm on Facebook as well. So Kevin D. St. Clergy is my handle on most social media. Instagram is my favorite place to connect with people. That I share a lot of really cool content for free on all my social media. We post almost every single day, some tip or trick for business owners and everybody else. So thank you.
Amazing. That's where I like to hang out myself. You also mentioned that you have a podcast, so talk about it here.
I do, yeah, and we just hit a new milestone, 300,000 downloads. Hopefully, by the time this is, will be up and more. But yeah, it's actually called Beyond Blind Blaming as well. So it's a podcast and a book. Each week, I bring on a different guest who tells their own story of how they moved beyond blind blaming and what it's done for them. Not everybody's read the book when they get on the podcast, but we've had some amazing, very successful people as guests on there. People like John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. He was on one of
No
my
kidding.
podcast episodes. Yeah.
That's a good grab.
He's a good one. Well, our buddies at Yap got him for me. So their booking team
Hmm,
is amazing, by the way.
okay.
But yeah, we've had some pretty cool guests on there. My favorite, there's two, well, God, I can't say my favorite. We led with, they're all in order of who we thought people would connect with most, but we've had episodes on there about the true definition of happiness. How to
Mhm,
have tough conversations was another good one.
mhm,
We've had another one about working with millennials. That one was really powerful because
mhm.
I hear so many people that complain about different age groups. And I was like, well, again, is it that they don't want to work or they just don't want to work for you? But
You
yeah,
right,
we've had a
right,
lot of
right.
really cool guests. I'd love to have you as a guest on the podcast if you're open to it.
Okay.
But yeah,
Well,
that's
I
our
just told
Beyond
you I
Blind
don't blame
Blaming.
anything.
That's right. Don't blame me. I'll catch you or complain. No excuses.
I don't blame, but thank you for the offer. Yeah, I don't blame or complain because I learned a long time ago that, I mean, putting it in a different context, my book that I wrote, it was basically like a memoir. And because, of my problems as a child, um, then, the spin that I took on the book is that you can't blame things that happen to you for where you are in life. So
Mm,
again, I learned a long time ago when, my husband or anybody else blames people, I see right away that it takes away your power. So I have stopped blaming, a long time ago, and
that's
now it's
good.
totally out of my life.
Well, I think you learned very early on that it's not. So there's a formula that I can leave everybody with. It's E plus R equals O. E stands for the event that occurs in your life, which we most of the time don't have much control over. Sometimes we do, but most of the time not really. R stands for how you react to that event, and that is what determines O, which is the outcome. And so that R part of that E plus R equals O seems to really hit home from people. I totally stole that from Jack Canfield with his
Mhm.
permission, but it's outstanding and it reduced a lot of the stress in my life because it's like, bad things happen, but how you react and how you handle it,
Yeah.
that's what's
And
going to
and
determine how.
again, don't give it the power. One of the things that I learned earlier in life is that, you it's like a card game. You can't the cards that you're dealt with, you got to learn to deal with
Right.
it.
Well, I mean, I
And
think
you
you
can
bring
still
up a
win.
great point. When you let someone else get you that upset about whatever it is, which
Yes.
happens all the time on social media, whoever
Mhm.
that may be, quote unquote, you know what I'm talking about, but you're giving them all the power.
You're giving them all the power. So yeah, I walk the talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No, it's
thank you.
good.
Yes, yeah. I'll talk to Yap because we're both on there. So we can see what we can come up with together. So amazing. So thank you for being on my podcast.
You're welcome.
So
Thanks for having me.
yeah, so I will have a transcript of my conversation with Kevin on the show page, which is myhelps.us. I will link out to his book. I'll link out to his website and link out to his social media handles so you can definitely follow him and get some tips. His content is one of the things that would help you in life. It's not just a bumper sticker. It is something that, yeah, I have seen where instances of having a blind spot. We can call it blind blaming, but the reason for coaches is because most people can't see, right? They have blind spots. So they need a coach or a friend or a husband or somebody to tell you what you can't see. So it's amazing. So Kevin, thank you for being on the show. And yeah, I will definitely go read your book. So thank
I
you.
love it. Yeah, you betcha. Thanks for having
You're
me.
very welcome. All right. So any last words before we wrap up?
No, I just think that if you do feel stuck, just remember there is hope, and hopefully the book will help you find what you're missing.
Yes, beautiful. All right, guys. Well, listen, thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of Author's Corner. Thank you, Kevin, for being on the show. Until next time, namaste.